To hell and back, the Iranian hostage crisis.
On November 4th, 1979, Iranian militants broke into the American embassy in Tehran, capturing 52 American diplomats and citizens. The hostages encountered the cruelty of humankind. For the United States, it was an encounter with radical Islam. It was an unfortunate event our country will never forget. In 1953, America's CIA completed that first successful attempt of overthrowing a foreign government. The man they put into power was named Mohammad Reza Shah Pahlavi. The Shah brought terror to the Iranian people during his 38 years as king. After a revolution of the Iranian citizens, the Shah was banished. In October of 1979, the Shah was accepted into the United States for a life-saving cancer treatment. During the beginning of the crisis, this letter was received from the people of Iran. Dear people of America, dear fellow citizens of a just world. The American government accuses Iran and Imam Khomeini of lacking respect for international law, but the same government welcomes and supports a criminal who has tortured and killed thousands of innocent people. Is this respect for international law? The Shah must be returned to Iran. He is responsible for countless atrocities and stole $23 billion from the people of Iran. The Iranian students who suffered under the Shah, who was supported by the U.S. government, have a simple request. Give us our criminal and take your people home. It is the American people in whom we trust, not the U.S. government. Yours truly, the Iranian people.
Actions of Iran have shocked the civilized world. For a government to applaud mob violence and terrorism, for a government actually to support and in effect participate in the taking and the holding of hostages is unprecedented in human history.
A passage from the diary of Robert C. Ode, who was a hostage during the hostage crisis. The students outside the consular section appeared to be somewhat confused at that point, and the consul general and about 4 other American members of the consular section, of which I was one, started up the street with the intention of going to his residence. When we were about 1.5 blocks from the consular section, we were surrounded by a group of students who were armed and told to return to the compound. When we protested, a shot was fired into the air above our heads. Next is a diary entry written by Jimmy Carter just a few days after hostages were taken. I spent most of the day, every spare moment, trying to decide what to do. We began to assess punitive action that might be taken against Iran. It's almost impossible to deal with a crazy man, except that he does have religious beliefs, and the world of Islam would be damaged if a fanatic like him should commit murder in the name of religion against 60 innocent people. I believe that's our ultimate hope for a successful resolution of this problem. We will not release the Shah, of course, as they demand. Diary entry, November 6, 1979. My grandfather, James Clifford, who was a soldier during the crisis, speaking about the newscast during that time period.
Well, everybody went about their normal lives, but a lot of people talked about it. It was a regular thing on TV, and it was on TV every day, and everybody talked about it. They did an update, and there was one TV station, ABC, that did an update every night. And they did this update, and it would count the days that the hostage situation was ongoing.
The special report that we planned to bring you tonight was about domestic politics, the battle among the Democrats. But we think the crisis in Iran is more urgent right now than the campaign here at home. Some 60 Americans, including our fellow citizen whom you just saw bound and blindfolded, are now beginning their 6th day of captivity inside the U.S. Embassy in Tehran. It's Friday morning there now, but throughout this night in Washington, officials will continue their search for some way to negotiate the hostages' freedom.
The man you're about to see is Colonel Charles Scott. He was taken hostage on that fateful day.
On November 4th, 1979, how old were you and what was your ranking in the military?
How old was I then? I was 46. Might have been 47. And I was a full colonel. I'd been a full colonel in the Army 5 years. My job at the embassy, I was the boss, the chief of the Defense Liaison Office.
The following are the details of the torture that Colonel Scott went through as a hostage.
Were you or anyone around you tortured physically or mentally?
I was the first month. It was really bad. By the time that month was over, both my shoulders had been separated. My eyes were swollen shut, couldn't see at all. Probably had a broken nose. I had teeth knocked out over here. These are implants that I've had since I got home. And I was worked over severely for the first month or so. Wasn't allowed to sleep. And they had 3 different interrogation teams that would work me over, and then they'd leave and another group would come in. And at one point they hung me by my wrists that far off the ground for 3 days and 3 nights. That's when my shoulders separated. You can't stay that long without, you think, well, you can hold up like that for a while, you can, but you can't do it for a long time. Your shoulders pull right out of the sockets. And what they were trying to get me to say things against my own government. And I just wouldn't do that.
Throughout this time, Colonel Scott managed to hold on. In a time where most people would give up on life, he stayed strong with the help of pure willpower and faith.
First thing, I'm a tough son of a gun. I have not had an easy life up until then. And I've been in combat on a number of occasions. So I was determined that no matter what they did to me, I was going to make it. And I never changed that attitude. Now, there were times when I was totally whipped and beaten. And that's where faith in God comes in, where you just prayed. You prayed for the strength to get through whatever it was they were doing to you. And it works. It works fine.
In April of 1980, Carter approved of an operation to rescue the hostages. When trying to abort the mission, a crash happened between a helicopter and an airplane, killing 8 servicemen. This was named Operation Eagle Claw. During the crisis, Jimmy Carter negotiated with the Iranians, exploring options to get our people back. In the end, it was decided that he unfreeze Iranian assets in American banks. This led to the return of the hostages.
They would break into regular shows, and you'd watch a TV show, and then they would stop. The TV show would just stop in the middle, and there'd be like a sign that would say "breaking news," and then that would be on for a few seconds, and then that would go off, and there'd be the newsman would be sitting at his desk, and he'd say, "breaking news from wherever," and they would start telling you the story. And sometimes those breaking news things would only last a minute or two, and sometimes they would last for hours, depending on what the news was.
Now, day one of Ronald Reagan's presidency, and day one of freedom for 52 Americans. Though thousands of miles apart, these 2 historic events moved almost on parallel tracks today. The new president had not been in office an hour when the former hostages became free men and women again.
When the doors of the planes opened, the waves of high emotion and pure love swept across the gray concrete runways like a summer storm. You could hear it, you could see it, you could feel it.
Thank you to my teacher, Mr. Fenn, my school, Impact Academy. Thank you to my parents, most of all, Colonel Scott, for his contribution to this project. Thank you all for your help and encouragement in this process.